listening to Power Plug Radio, home of your throwback jams.
All right. And we're live. We're back. Ladies and gentlemen, boys, girls, non-identifiers, welcome back to the Political Hour. I'm Mhariel Summers, and I can't tell you how excited I am to be back in the sack this morning, talking about what needs to be discussed. Politics at the national level, at the state level, at the local level. So, indeed, my apologies, folks. Last week, the Political Hour, actually Power Plug Radio kind of took a little hiatus, a little vacation. It's always necessary. But here we are back. And so last week, I really wanted to talk gun violence in the black community. I really wanted to talk about some of the harsher realities that we as a community were facing. And that's what I'm going to really kind of talk about mainly today. So we'll do it in a reverse order. I'll start with local news, and we'll talk about, these situations that are commanding our political attention. Beyond gun violence, we got the community benefits agreement. We have Sankofa getting this Deuces deal. We have the Tropicana field development. Those are some important local issues that I want to dive into first and foremost, and then we'll kind of round back around to some of the state news. Session has about a month left. We've had some things pass. We have that big leak that's going on in Manatee County with Piney Point. And so there are some things to talk about there. And if we have time, we'll touch on some of the things that are happening nationally, how corporate America is continuing its peculiar battle with trying to appease consumers and also appease politicians at the same time. So let's dive right into it, right? Local news. Gun violence plagues the city of St. Petersburg. If you've seen that as a headline and you've been living in this community, you probably wouldn't be surprised per se, because unfortunately, here we are in the fourth month of 2021, and we've had some people say 13, some people say 15 murders by gun violence thus far in 2021. This number is astounding to, any community, especially ours, though, because in the year of 2020, last year, we had 15 murders total that the St. Pete Police Department is reporting, right? And so to be able to match those numbers within the first 3 months of a new year is frightening. It's frightening. Let us remember, though, about four to six of these murders are attributed to one individual, Mr. Cornelius Whitfield. He was the young man who unfortunately killed a lot of his family members, and was also implicated in a murder that happened in the apartment complexes a few days or to a week prior. So we do have that rarity, right? We do have that. I guess we have that special case that kind of inflates the numbers a bit. But even without Mr. Whitfield, we still have too many murders on our hands in our city, folks. And the main issue is that these are all black victims and all black shooters. You see, our society, we have this, we have a reactionary response to police shootings, or when a white person or a person who is not black commits acts of violence, especially towards the black community. We have no tolerance for police brutality in our community. That is the quickest way to get us out into the streets and organizing and mobilizing towards some type of change, which is a good thing. But the problem here that I'm identifying as a young person in this community who happens to be black, who can observe what's happening in other communities, right, is that the majority of the death, the majority of the violence is not coming at the hands of the police. It's happening in our communities. It's happening behind our own lines. So here we are with this conundrum in my mind, right? And what I have been able to observe is that the immediate reaction from those of who are in the political influence sphere, the immediate reaction is stop. Let's stop this. Let's end this. Let's put the guns down. Let's which is true, which is what we all want. But when you study our people, when you take all of these variables into consideration, the proper reaction, in my opinion, in the immediate should be why and how. So instead of stop and let's end this, we need to be looking at it from a lens of, look, why is this happening right now? And what is how is this happening? We have so-called so advanced in this society, and we can point out all of those advancements. So how is it that our own people are perpetuating some of the grimmest realities in our own community? That's where I start with it, right? So looking at it through a political lens, it's political, but it's kind of philosophical at the same time. The first question is, what is the substance of the black social sphere? If you want to be a black leader, quote unquote, or you want to have some kind of influence over positive change in the black community, I think that's the first question that we have to honestly look at and examine in 2021 is, what is the substance of our social sphere? What constitutes power? Who has influence? What are the avenues that our people identify as adequate advancement? Which avenues do our young people identify coming up with as the most adequate risk to take for advancement in this society? What is adequacy to the black person? Now, I know that these questions, they sound like open-ended philosophical questions. But those of us who are concerned with the black plight, those of us who are wanting to ensure equity and prosperity for our people in the present and to leave it for the generations that lie ahead, these are the deeper questions that we have to analyze in the present. The more that we know about our current position, the more power that we'll have defining what adequacy is for our own people, right? We need to be able to identify who the power players are in our community, and only then will we understand how to properly challenge the merits in their ideology, because it's their ideology that is proliferating through our communities. So how do we get back in connection with our own people? It's as simple, in my opinion, right? It's as simple as listening to rap music. Now, how can rap music lead us anywhere these days, right? Understand, folks, black people have always used music as our medium to express our realities. I've talked to several community leaders, and I've said, since Wade in the Water, black people have used music as a medium to communicate the messages of our reality. wade in the water, old Negro spiritual that the enslaved people used to talk about the routes of the Underground Railroad, to the strange fruit that came along in the early 1920s, right? That talked about the lynchings, right? The strange fruit hanging from the trees in the South, black bodies. Fast forward, what's going on? Marvin Gaye, the Love Train, folks talking about war and love and how they need to perpetuate in society, all the way up until Fight the Power, Public Enemy, F the Police, right? These are all the same people using the same medium, but just a different message that resonates with their time. So when I say to folks that it is as simple in this current dichotomy that we find ourselves in, that is as simple as listening to rap music, we have to understand, in my opinion, at least, Tupac Shakur, 1996, murder, Las Vegas Strip, right? In my opinion, this man was the last great music prophet that tried to translate what people from our community, from the most dire and desperate parts of our community, were crying out for from the mainstream. He was able to speak to the masses in our own language, but then turn around and had the courage to translate that to mainstream America. Thug life. We always see this picture of Tupac and he has thug life tattooed over his stomach. But what I love about this man and what I admire, what gives me the, gall to call him the last prophet who was able to do this, is he spent his time trying to explain to the masses, not just the white masses, but even black leaders, why. He defines so exactly the contradictions of why people who share his experience willingly take the risks that they take. So if you were alive in the 90s, even like I was born in 1990, right? So I was alive and I knew Tupac, but I really didn't know him, right? But if you were alive from this moment that we're in 2021, I invite you to go back and take a look at this man that I'm telling you is the last great prophet, to explain the black contradiction. In today's world, you have so many people who don't understand, even in our community, black leaders who don't understand the bonks, the thick dreads, the goals, the tats, the ambition that young people find in the streets and the attraction that our own people find to that culture. I'm trying to tell y'all this morning, it's in the music. And if you need to go back to the very, very beginning, listen to some Tupac. Ambitions of a Rider, Keeping Your Head Up, Hail Mary, I Ain't Mad at You, Brenda's Got a Baby, Hit 'Em Up. Go look at the lyrics, go read it, and go listen to this black man trying to explain to mainstream America the contradiction. Look at it from a political lens, folks. This is what I'm saying is going to be the answer to a lot of our problems that we see in our community today as it relates to gun violence and the perpetual nature, right, of black people being incarcerated and making decisions that seem to be self-inhibiting, right? It seems like such a perplexing situation. But I'm telling you, as black people, that the answer is in the music. Understand that I'm not telling you to go listen to Tupac from some that I can identify as one of the last key divergent moments for us as a community. Now, we've had several divergent moments, right? The rise of black wealth kind of caused a split. The prominence of black people started causing a split, right? You had, what else? You had incarceration, mass incarceration. So you had fatherless homes starting to cause diverging understanding of black reality, right? drug addiction, right? I think back to my own family. One of my oldest aunts, who was a successful nurse, who, just was a regular old hardworking married black woman, and how the crack epidemic impacted that family and shattered it into ruin. Something I can tangibly see and touch with my own eyes on my own family tree is not unique to the black plight. Understand that all of the effects of these realities that we know, that we've learned about, the effects are explained in the music, folks. So I invite you to go back and listen to some Tupac this morning, because I believe Pac has the seeds for much of the music, the image, the lifestyle that mainstream black people can't seem to understand about our own people. And we have to. This isn't optional, right? Because these are the mindsets and the perspectives that are perpetuating these conditions that we so desperately are trying to annihilate in our own community. We're working day in, night out to get rid of these, what we call desperate or deprived or underserved or whatever, common phrase you want to use to define it. We have more black people in positions of power today than ever before, right? And everybody is concerned with the black plight. Everybody is concerned with shining the light on white supremacy. You understand what I'm saying? Like, I can identify so many black elected officials who stand in the gaps for us in these chambers. Mad respect. But what I'm advocating to those same leaders is, if we don't take a compassionate, almost anthropology-like perspective of our own people, we're going to lobby and advocate for things for a community that has no hands to accept all of that stuff, that doesn't have a mentality to leverage all of these advancements. That's the worry that I have right now, right? As I see on a mainstream level, so many black elected officials, so many black CEOs and people ascending to power, but on a community level, I don't see the community ready to leverage these advancements. And this is what I worry about. So understand that this is what drives these points of views. We need to analyze and relate to our own people, folks. We know the history as black educated people, as business owners, elected officials, maybe clergy at a higher status. We know the history. We know about the disproportionalities and all these statistics. We know about white supremacy. We know all the educated factors, the so-called educated factors that produce the statistics that we abhor, right? Dropout, mass incarceration, the economic inequality, all of these things that we abhor on the mainstream level and lobby against. We don't know enough about the effects that it's had on our own people. This is what we don't know enough. So we're being blindsided. Seems like every weekend now, right? With just waves and waves of black death now infiltrating in our own community. This has been happening in larger cities, LA, New York, Chicago, Philadelphia, Atlanta, Miami, even. The reality of our own people being the destructive hand of our own community. I mean, we're just now starting to feel it, getting that lump in our throat here in St. Pete. And what I'm trying to say, y'all, what I'm trying to talk about this morning is that we have to relate first and foremost before we start talking about solutions. There's a multifaceted way that I'm suggesting that we do this relation today in the name of politics. listening sessions with leaders is a step that we can take. We always have workshops and classes and programs available, right, for the most vulnerable of the population. But what I've seen in my couple of years in this field is that the people who are showing up to these programs are few and far between when it comes to those who need the actual work. What I'm suggesting is that we take the same approach, but in terms of educating our leaders. Let's get these major players inside of workshops and have them dissect hip hop music inside of these workshops. Let's get these major players inside of presentations that break down the economic benefit of some of these more illegitimate lifestyles. Another solution, let's focus on generating the economy that's already proliferating here in our communities, y'all. The music industry, restaurateurs, artists, the hair and makeup individuals, the fashion individuals, and the athletes. Yes, all of those are talents that we naturally have, but all of those are also billion-dollar industries here in our country. So as we look for solutions, how do we provide opportunities for people in these underserved communities to become titans in those industries that proliferate not just in our Black community, but in Black communities around the country? If it wasn't true, if it wasn't proliferating around Black communities around the country, folks like Rod Wave, how do they become national #1 selling artists, right? It's because the culture, the habits, the socioeconomics that happen right here in the Black community in St. Pete are prevalent in the Black community in Tampa, are prevalent in the Black community in Jacksonville, are prevalent in the Black community in Tallahassee, in Orlando, in Daytona, in West Palm, Fort Lauderdale, Miami. Like, folks, what I'm trying to say is here in our community, we cannot be blind to the fact that we have talents, entrepreneur spirit, and the ability to capitalize from right where we are with the talents that people are currently benefiting off. I'm not talking about the kids. And look, we need to focus on the kids. I love the political action that focuses on our young high school or our middle school children, because the children are the future. But a lot of the perpetual negative statistics that we see in our community aren't all at the hands of the youth. So do we write off those in their 20s? Do we write off those in their 30s? We can't afford to do that as a people. We just simply can't. We need to bring those folks into the fold of the mainstream American economy. How do we do that? In my opinion, we look at these industries that I'm talking about, the music industry, hair and makeup, fashion, athletes, artists, and we help folks who are interested in those crafts understand the legitimate business opportunities in those industries. So anybody can become, the P who puts on the Migos. Anybody can become, the slutty vegan restaurant in Atlanta. That anybody can become an IMG Academy where we're producing Black athletes by the masses, or athletes in general, but from a Black owned and Black operated facility that was made here. Let's build those things. And then messaging is the last thing I want to talk about, at least to that point. We got to have this inclusive messaging. It has to be more of like, we all we got thing versus something more punitive. We have to be able to appeal to the hearts of our people rather than take these white supremacist measures of tougher and we're putting down our fists and we're drawing the line in the sand. As Martin Luther King once put it, darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that, right? Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. And so I'm making this appeal not to the young people this morning. I'm making this appeal not to the people of my generation this morning. I'm making this appeal to my parents' generation this morning, to those who are 50 years and older. Y'all's generation had the courage to sit down at all white lunch counters. Y'all had the courage to go into places and risk everything for the sake of giving us a better opportunity in America. And I guess what I'm trying to break down this morning is that today we have to have the courage to get out in these hoods, in these ghettos, and to love on our own people. Despite us not understanding the choices that they make, us understanding, the schools that they may have grown up in, right? The homes, the violence that they may have seen, the realities that they may have faced. Despite the decisions that they choose to make, we have to have the courage to go in and love on our own people. So listen to some rap music this morning. Long story short. But it's super important because we depend on those same people for actual politics, right? So here in the local sphere, we have the CBA, the Community Benefits Agreement, that keeps coming before City Council. We have the TROP development. We have they narrowed it down to 4 different bidders now, who all have a plan for the Tropicana field site. We need the people in the community to be involved along this whole way. We need them to have an input, and how can they if they never have before, right? If they're not a part of any of these circles that are bringing this to their attention, if they graduated from one of these, like I said, K through 12 systems that we already know fails them with the tools to participate in civic engagement after they graduate. If they're worried about money, getting the next dollar, if they're worried about beef with the next person and guns and their kids, like if they don't have people who are translating it to them in their language, if all they have is people saying, come to this class, come to this workshop, and we'll let you in on how to know what's going on the, how can we expect our own people to show up in masses in support of things that we know that benefit us? So this all ties back into what I'm just talking about, y'all. The black masses. For us to move the needle forward, the hard work starts in organizing the army. We've done all the hard work that the last couple decades have required, which is equity and representation. We got the people in the spots now. We have the attention of the power players. We've done the assignments up until now. And what I'm just trying to say is, as we go forward, let's not miss this key important step of making sure the black masses are catered to in a way that makes it inclusive. We can't blame our own people for not lining up to be included. You know what I'm saying? Like, think about it. So we got these TROP proposals, and most of them say it's going to take about 10 years to complete. They put up, their renderings of what the completed project. Beautiful. Consider it. A lot of them want to include the history, and they're very sensitive about St. Pete's racial past, which we've made it important for them to, have that perspective, which is good, right? But what I'm trying to say to y'all today on this political hour is what matters is equity. What matters is, as these things go up, as these changes start making, people are going to start making money, y'all. People are going to start benefiting immediately, y'all. And what matters is that the black people in this city are among those who start benefiting immediately. Not those who get to move into more affordable housing once it's built. Not those who get to have access and lanes to the things, or a plaque, that's commemorating somebody from history. All of those things are important, and let's make sure we have those things. But what's most important, y'all, is that we get the proper equity out of the deal. We don't want all of the black people in South St. Pete to flee downtown because they're making 2,000 affordable housing units. This is how the inner city was built. Ask Brooklyn, ask Harlem about these affordable metropolises that are promised. We don't want the South Side to get gentrified. So all of this black progress means that something visible in terms of our socioeconomic progress must happen. That's what we need to look out for. So there's some great things happening in this city. We got the Sankofa. The Sankofa Development Group has been approved to be a key partner in this deal developing the Deuces. What this means, folks, is immediate benefit for the black community, right? This means that those who are entrusted with the planning, those who are going to be a part of the construction of whatever is built, and then those who will occupy those spaces will all benefit from this deal, right? This isn't a deal where a whole bunch of white people get together and decide to build something great for black people and then build it, and then we're the ones who have to pay for it, can't afford to use it. People who aren't from our community use it more than us, and gentrification ultimately sets in. This is not one of those deals. And so what I'm trying to say here this morning, y'all, is we have to make sure that we have the capacity to not have a one-off in our own community where black people are receiving equity. In order for us to get the black masses in a position to catch all of the blessings, to catch all of the effort and the leverage of all of the successes of black elected officials, of black entrepreneurs, of black organization leaders, civic leaders, community, if we are going to leverage those benefits, we can't afford to have a community of us left behind in our own community. We can't afford to write off the gangsters and the thugs and the gangbangers and expect black prosperity to be sustainable, right? How do we sustain a culture that is authentic and that is black without segregating or alienating our own people? Can we leverage our advancements to heal our own communities? That's the goal. Anything outside of that is capitalistic, it's economic, it's not community focused. It has the right idea, but it doesn't have the right heart in it. Because that's the challenge. Black advancements as a community. We need to advance for all of us. So as always, folks, we are going to take a break. We're going to take a break here on the Political Hour. I've been going hard, but I really wanted to dive into that because we as a community are facing this pandemic of violence. Table COVID for a second. We as a community are facing, any given morning you log onto your social media, you never know who's going to be next to the RIP. It's crazy. So how do we begin to affect that? Listen back, dive through some of those answers. Think about, what we can do to relate to our own people, to break down the philosophy and our own culture, to debate those things. And how we can debate how can we even bring about arenas that make the people who are actually participating in those activities even legitimately appearing to debate the merits. It's deep, and I'm gonna keep talking about it, y'all. But when I come back, I'm gonna briefly just touch on some state politics. I'm gonna touch on some things that are happening on the national level real quick, and we'll wrap up the political hour for the week. So, my name is Mhariel Summers. This is Power Plug Radio. Make sure you tune in, powerplugradio.com, and we'll be back in just a minute.
You're listening to Power Plug Radio, home of your throwback jams. You're listening to Power Plug Radio, home of your throwback jams.
Yeah. All the vibes, all the time. PowerPlugRadio.com. Make sure you're tuning in all week long. The morning show with Paige and Antonio is super awesome. The Man Cave. I know they got some financial literacy programs. Yeah. Start your business up. Power Plug Radio serving the Tampa Bay community here with Black content, Black owned, and I'm happy to be a part of it, to throw my little political 2 cents in. So there's a lot going on, y'all. There's always a lot going on in the world of politics. We have some elections coming up here in the city of St. Petersburg. So you guys be aware. What is it? What are we in now? April. So about 4 months from now, we will be in a primary election to elect the top 2 contenders for who will be the next mayor of St. Petersburg. Right now, our mayor for the last 2 terms has been Rick Kreisman. But now it's time to move on from the Kreisman administration on to the future. And so it's very important to keep your eye on that. We got some city council races on the docket. District 2, 4, 6, and 8 are all having candidates who are in. Some of them don't have an opponent. So we'll see how that shapes out. But it's an important time in St. Pete politics to not only pay attention, like we talked about before we went to break, community benefits agreement, Tropicana Field development, the Deuces development, on a county level, the community redevelopment area, the CRA. It's a lot to pay attention to, and so we'll keep you updated here on the Political Hour. But let's take a look at the state, because on the state level, there are things taken, and I guess okay. So everybody knows that politics is kind of like interchangeable, right? There's certain laws that exist at the national level that trump the state level, certain laws that exist at the state level that trump the local level. And as we look at the state politics, House Bill 1 is something that we've been talking about for a few episodes here. The anti-protest bill. Unfortunately, this bill passed, and it passed in the House. It's in the Senate. Very little suggests that it won't pass the Senate and go to the governor's desk to be signed into law. So all of those implications that we were talking about, if this bill passes, looks like the bill's gonna pass. What actions are organizations or individuals going to take to combat this egregious piece of legislation? It's all up in the air. We don't know, at the beginning of this time last year, we had no idea about the fate that Ahmaud Arbery would face, or Breonna Taylor would face, or George Floyd would face. We were just trying to get through a pandemic this time last year. And so this time next year, who knows what realities, we'll have to combat. But with this new law in place, it'll be very interesting to see how groups choose to organize. But, keep an eye on it. It's still passing. What did pass and what is on the way to the governor's desk to be signed into law that bothers me just a tad is House Bill 233, the intellectual diversity law. So what this law does, House Bill 233 is it institutes a survey of all of the publicly funded college campuses to ensure that there's an equitable distribution of thought on campuses, which on the surface level, that all sounds very noble, doesn't it? It's just a survey. But see, what I don't like about it is the survey is intended to give the legislature or the president of said college the ability to make changes based on the lack of diversity of thought. Why is that a big problem? It's a precursor to ensure that conservative views aren't stifled, folks. It's the same beef that they have with big tech, almost for the same reason. You know, why is Twitter, why is Facebook, why do they have to make Parler, right? Why are conservative views being silenced, quote unquote, silenced? It's because it's racist, man. In mainstream America, the academics, there's nothing else they can do to combat the fact that some of this stuff is just racist. So I know y'all probably remember a gentleman by the name of Richard Spencer. He tried to go to the University of Florida a few years back to do a presentation on some white supremacist views. What people ultimately determine to be white supremacist views. What I fear is that House Bill 233, this intellectual diversity law that they're trying to put in place, is going to pave the way for these, 60 years ago, I'm sure would be Ku Klux Klan members want to spread on these college campuses. I say we leave it to the academics to debate the thought and to draw the lines. They're smart. They're the doctorates of our society. They're the people who have read all of the reports and have done the research. I say we leave it to them to draw the lines and what is healthy academic debate versus what is perpetuating racist and white supremacist ideology. There is a line, and the line should be drawn. Because if not, the pendulum always swings both ways, right? So this generation, we might be battling against that ideology, but what's stopping it from going super extreme in the other way? And we don't want that. It kind of like offsets a society. So, that's something to kind of keep your eye on, guys, this intellectual diversity law and how it's actually going to be. Remember, it's just a survey. It's just a survey. So something we got to kind of keep our eyes on the years going forward. You guys also may have heard in the news about this water leak in Manatee County, Piney Point. So Piney Point is this reservoir over in Manatee County that holds 800 million gallons over 3 retention ponds of wastewater. It started to leak. And at this point, it's leaking hundreds of gallons of this wastewater into our Tampa Bay by the hour. It's not a pretty situation, folks. Some environmentalists estimate that the excess nitrogen and phosphates from this water are going to have like a detrimental effect on the waters here in Tampa Bay. They're going to perpetuate things like red tide. And here, more than anywhere else, we kind of depend on our beaches and our bay for tourism, for the fishing industry and so forth. And so this is a big issue that I know, my official capacity, working for a state representative that the state has all hands on deck. Our Nikki Fried, who is our commissioner, who is in charge of the environment and so forth, all over it. Folks are all over it, and there have been questions about who's going to be held accountable. And I think they'll get to that. I think that's ultimately, it's inescapable, because who's going to be held accountable? What's done is done. But the initial reaction that I can see from the public sector, even from the national level, we've had the U.S. Representative Vern Buchanan has gotten involved, and the Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, has gotten involved at a national level. The main thing is to put a bandage on this thing, to stop the bleeding, to get our environmental groups to assess what effect this is going to have on our environment, and to be super reactive in that atmosphere, as opposed to being reactive in a punitive, more finger pointing atmosphere. So let's monitor that, right? Estimates say this is going to cost about $200 million to fix and clean up. As I'm talking, water is pouring into the bay, and so let's keep an eye on it to see how the state and the national government and local government are able to save our bay here in the interim. So, lastly, as promised, let's take a quick gander at some national politics. And really, I just have a few minutes here. So what I mainly want to kind of talk about is corporate America's fight with the political mainstream. So corporate America is tricky, right? Their goal and ultimate goal long term is always to stay in the good graces of the consumer. But what they don't want to do is end up on the wrong side of history. They've learned from the mistakes of other corporations before them that, staying in the good graces of the majority might be the short-term benefit, but in the long term, you don't want to be on the wrong side of history, at least publicly, right? So behind the scenes, they may still have the same patriarchal makeup, lack of diversity, inequality in pay. But to the public, they never want to appear this way, right? They never want to give off any sign that they aren't sticking up with the times. So what we've had is Major League Baseball in this past week move the All-Star game away from the state of Georgia in retaliation for their newly passed voter suppression legislation. Now, baseball is largely white, known as America's pastime, America's sport. And so Major League Baseball deciding to do this in the name of rejecting voter suppression, man, that's a big upset to Republicans. Mitch McConnell came out saying that these folks should stay out of choosing sides in politics. Not in terms of being donors, but in terms of getting involved with the issues. They need to stay out of it. Does anybody else see the contradiction in that position? Anytime anyone speaks out about white supremacy or about equity for black people in particular, not minority equity or, just these ambiguous terms that talk about women and, minority. But anytime the message is black people need more equity or white supremacy is holding black people down, anytime that's the message, there is so much pushback from the Republican side of politics. And it's it doesn't matter who it's coming from. So here you have the Major League Baseball, majority white, historically white, saying, look, our All-Star game isn't going to be played in a state where you guys think is acceptable to suppress the votes of American citizens just because, they disagree with you. For the power structure to punch back and say, well, you need to stay out of politics. Don't keep your money out of it, but keep your, I think those are the things, those are the nuances that peg me the most. It's contradictory. Corporate America never wants to get it wrong. But at the same time, they are not working in the best interest of the American people. It seems, look at minimum wage. You know what I mean? Look at folks struggling to get benefits from their employers. Look at the income inequality gap where you see these CEOs and executives making, multiple times the money that their employees are making. So, that's just all I want to touch on national politics today, y'all, is, we can't be, let's not just be fooled as these major corporations look to align with our interests. They're doing what's safe in the eyes of the public, even when it is right. We need monumental change in this country. And I can go on forever about it. So come on back next week, and I promise I'll talk some more about it. This is the political hour. There's so much to jam in this, but from this episode, excuse me, folks, from this episode, if nothing else, I hope you got that black people need to care more about black people. So I'm Mhariel Summers. I hope you will come back next Friday, and we'll talk some more about this. Power Plug Radio. Take care. Have a good week.
You're listening to Power Plug Radio. Home of your